There you go. Nice logo, huh? My son Dave designed that. Okay, there we are. Yeah, that's the three of us. We made Dave go in the front because he's the best looking. Okay, so we sell at the farmers markets. I guess I jumped ahead of myself here. We do at 3 farmers markets in Pittsburgh. Lots of people waiting in line. That's good. And we also do CSA. This is at our CSA. We do CSA a little differently. We let people choose what they want for the most part. That's CSA as well at a satellite spot. We do one satellite spot besides the farm. That same satellite spot. It's at a fitness club. I got some bodies there, I'll tell you. Wow. These guys are in shape. Okay, and we have our farm market. We're putting an addition on this year because we don't have enough room. We need to enlarge the bakery. Okay, so we do high tunnels 2 ways. We have several 16 by 96 high tunnels. We have 3 of those. We have a 20 by 96. We have 2 30 by 96s. We have a Haygrove. And we've got another one that we used to have blackberries in, and we actually built the high tunnel over top of the blackberries. But since then, we've torn the blackberries out, so it's 30 by 150. But this is one of the raised bed high tunnels. We actually built it on a slope because we're in western Pennsylvania, after all, and didn't want to have to straighten it out. So we built it on a slope, and it actually worked out pretty good. Worked out pretty good. But we grow a myriad of things in there. And then we also have our October festivities. I'm the tractor driver. It's my favorite job because I get to sit down, and I don't have to kneel. And this year, oh, this is such a cool thing. We accidentally did this, or I say accidentally. Dave says, no, I planned this. Dave got the idea that he would plant sunflowers as a cover crop. So we went down to Tractor Supply, got 3 bags of black oil sunflower seeds that you'd feed your birds. He put them in the no-till planter and planted them out there on the field not far from where we pick your own pumpkin. And we had 2 fields that looked like this. And what a fantastic photo op that turned out to be for October. And a real boon for our bees. I'm sure our bees are going to be much healthier this year than other years because of they just came into bloom perfectly, like peaked in the middle of October. It was great. What a great picture, huh? Look at that. Okay, let's get down to business. I don't want to mislead you to think that I kept track of all of these figures exactly, during the season, because I don't. But I have a pretty good handle after so many years of the things that we grow in the high tunnel. Now, first, we're going to look at the 16 by 96s, which I think is more important because most of you probably don't have raised beds, wooden raised beds. So we'll just go through this a little bit. And this is gross income now. This is just without thinking about any expenses. You got your plants. I guess I could point to it. You got the numbers of plants right here, or the square foot of the high tunnel. You got the numbers of plants. And I estimated how many plants you actually were able to yield from what you planted. And some are better than others. Lettuce, you get a pretty good yield, and that's probably even a little low. Kale, I'm sure that's low. Bell peppers, we only did that like a couple of times, and I, as far as I can remember, I'm guessing about 90%, and tomatoes about 90%. But and then how many were harvested of each one, and this is the unit. Now the unit, of course, is different in all of these. In the onions, it's each. In the lettuce, it's each. In the kale, it's by the bunch. So when you're picking this kale plant, we're going to assume that it's to the size where you get like a bunch of kale off of each plant, is what I was assuming there. Now, the kale's a little deceiving. It's actually even better yield than that because you can actually come back on, and as long as you leave it in the high tunnel. Now, if you want to renovate and plant something else, then you're going to have to take it out, but it'll grow back. Bell peppers are each, and tomatoes are by the pound. Now, this is like an average over the season of the tomatoes. The first ones you pull off there, hopefully you're getting $3 a pound. So, that would be a little bit differently, but this is an average. Okay, so that's the gross income. Now, for the important things, okay, this is what we do with all of those crops that you just saw, okay? We lay 4 beds across a 16 by 96 high tunnel by hand, and I think Dave was, saying about how narrow these footpaths are in between here. They're pretty narrow, but in this case, we're planting kale, and so we do 2 rows across the bed, 18 inches apart in a row. Okay, so let's look at expenses. Now, this is assuming in these 16 by 96s that we're able to fit 2 crops in each one. Oh, can you guys not hear me back there? Sorry.
Battery's running out.
Oh, okay. Oh, battery on that's running out.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. All right, so 2 crops a year in a 16 by 96. And so starting out with onions, we can plant onions in March, so we get them in there really early. And the cost of the transplants, and now I'm sure that your costs may be different than all of these. And some of these, like peppers and tomatoes, I looked that up on the internet, what a cost might be, so I just pulled that information off the internet. And lettuce is not very expensive to raise. Onion plants, of course, you've got to. In March, we ordered them up from Dixondale in Texas, so they're fairly expensive to haul up like that. But and the other thing is that the number of plants that you put in the high tunnel isn't necessarily what you're going to get shipped. They don't all fit or something like that, so you've got a little more expense in that. But so the total cost of the transplants. The total cost of the fertilizer. Now, in these 16 by 96s, this is where we would take the horse manure that's been composted for 3 years, and we put a 100 bushel manure spreader full in the 16 by 96, and then we Roterra, once over with the Roterra, very, very slow, and we're ready to lay the plastic. And that's it. We don't do any other tillage or no other. Again, if I was there, I would be putting down the chicken poop fertilizer, the Revita, fertilizer. I would be putting that down as well. So that's the fertilizer cost. And then the labor hours, now that's where you're going to get all your money into, of course. And this is going to be different from all of you. If you've got some kids, well, your own kids, that would be great. Or you have someone who makes less. All of these labor hours are figured at $12 an hour. But it could be less. Maybe you've got somebody that you're paying cash to. I mean, this is $12. Maybe you're paying them $10 an hour, but with other expenses, it's $12. So total labor. So and then there's your fixed cost. Okay, what does this greenhouse cost to build? Again, I'm figuring the cost. When I do these fixed costs, I'm doing the fixed cost of the materials. I'm not figuring the cost of the labor, because I do that myself, and I'm free. So this is the actual frame cost on a 16 by 96 today, not when I built these back in the 90s. Okay, this is today, and then I figured it over 20 years. I figure it's going to last 20 years. But it probably will last longer than that, but I don't know for sure. And then the plastic, this is amortized again over 5 years. I use 4-year plastic, but I'm in western Pennsylvania, very overcast place of the world. I get 5 years out of my plastic routinely. So I figured 5 years on the plastic. And so the total fixed cost, and then divide that by 2 crops a year. So that's how I come up with the $84 per crop, okay? So there's your total expenses for everything that you've got involved in these crops. Here's a crop of lettuce, and of course we have this is either early in the spring or late in the fall, because that's when we do lettuce in the high tunnel. And we're worried about what the temperature was going to be that night, so we got a propane heater in there. But boy, we can sell and really harvest quite a bit of that lettuce. And we do so well with lettuce because we consistently have it from the beginning of May until Christmas. Pretty much consistently have lettuce all the time at all our markets. There's some very nice romaine. And there it is on sale at the market for $2.99. Must have had too much at that time. Couldn't sell it all, so we put it on sale. So here's the net income from the 16 by 96. That's the total income. That's the total expenses, including labor and your fixed costs. And this is the number of dollars profit, and then figure in the cost per square foot, or the profit per square foot. Now again, these prices could be different for you. What I would suggest that you do, if you could take this same thing home and figure these things out for yourself, and that way you could figure out which of these crops are making you the most money. I really like all of these, well, except for bell peppers. I like all of these crops. Especially I like onions, because we can get in there early in March. We can't get in there in March with anything else too much. Lettuce, I love lettuce because we can't have it in the field, and I like to have lettuce all the time. Our market opens March 19th. Now, I'm never going to have lettuce that early, but at least as soon as I can have, we start farmers markets the day after Mother's Day. And so I want to be able to have stuff there. My son gave a talk on cucumbers in bags. This was the first year ever that we had cucumbers for sale at the farmers market day after Mother's Day, which is fantastic in my opinion, because it really got people over to our stand because no one else had them. So if you can have lettuce at your market, or at your stand, or your farmer's market stand, whenever no one else does, then that's a great thing. That's a great thing. It'll really attract the people in. And these head lettuces are not hard to grow. I do have here, let's see, 2 crops per, biologicals. Definitely we would put ladybugs in the spring to control aphids, because it seems like no matter what we do, we can't keep aphids off of things. And then the same thing in the fall, because as soon as it gets too cold for the natural ladybugs, then the aphids population starts exploding. So I get ladybugs in the spring and the fall. And for the tomatoes and peppers, Dave would put those parasitic mites in too. He would use those as well. Again, that wasn't figured in on this cost, but the ladybugs are nominal. I might spend $100 a year on them, but which of these crops stands out different from all the rest? Now, I know as far as the dollars go, but what's different about one of these crops that's different from all the rest? No, it's lettuce. Because lettuce is a 4-week crop. All the rest of these are long seasons. That lettuce you can be harvesting that lettuce in 4 weeks in the high tunnel. So that's a big thing. That's a very important aspect, okay? So if you're not growing lettuce in the high tunnel, you should consider it. Okay, varieties. I got that backwards. Look at that. Hold on, here. Kale, winter boar, and lacinato, we grow both. Onions are candy. Tomatoes is primo red. Lettuce, Skyphos is a red bib lettuce. The single most cold-resistant lettuce that you can find, in my opinion. It's the coldest one we've ever found. And by the way, we do farm in the coldest place on earth. Did I mention that? It's in the valley. It's clay soil. It just can't get any colder. But one good thing is we don't have a wind problem with high tunnels. Red fire, new red fire for red lettuce, dove for romaine, starfighter is the green, and Adriana is the green bib. And peppers that we've grown in the high tunnel, Cupid. I know Cupid is just a little red pepper. It's just like a miniature pepper, but it's only this big. But the thing is, you get bushels and bushels of them. They really produce like crazy. Flavor Burst, which is a yellow pepper. Again, you see I'm trying to get higher end, not just going to grow a green pepper in the high tunnel. And then Super Hungarian Hot Wax, we've grown that too. Okay, let's move on to the other culture, which is, we're planting, must be onions early in the year, is the raised beds. Now, the raised beds are 2x10s, and the hardest part is these stakes right here, getting those buggers in the ground to hold these things up. I'd recommend if you have steel angles, but I don't know where you're going to get that many steel angles at a reasonable price. But and the cost of these beds, in addition to the cost of the greenhouse, is up there as well. I don't have that on here. Also, on these two 30x96s where we have these raised beds, we have a giant wood burner course, with the giant wood burner, you got to have a giant stack of wood too, so you got to do that. But we start this wood burner up about the 3rd week of February, and when we need it, we run it. I mean, we can let it just smolder if we don't need it sometimes, but it's just during the night, and we're only looking at 45 degrees. I mean, we can raise that up if we want. We have control over it. What it does is it's got a 300-gallon hot water jacket, and we pump it through both greenhouses, and then we have heat exchangers in there just with a fan behind the heat exchangers. It's a 500,000 BTU wood burner, but you better have wood. I'm telling you what, you could put 2 full, maybe 3 wheelbarrow fulls at one time in this thing. It's so big, yes.
How long have you had that?
Oh, we've had that thing for about 20 years.
Yeah. Do you feel as though it's more efficient? You're talking about.
It's not efficient at all.
Well, not efficient, but as far as all the time you're spending cutting wood or.
Well, it is, and I'll tell you why. When we open our market up on March 19th, we'll have 4 or 5 crops out of those high tunnels that we can sell at our market. And we can put HVF on that little tag that has the price. So they know they're getting something fresh from the farm. And the same thing on the back end, November, December, when we're heating it, we have stuff all the way to Christmas.
But you couldn't use propane?
Oh, sure, you could use propane, but I can imagine it's a little more expensive. We have a landscaper guy that'll dump pine wood like all we want. And we only manufacture that firewood, cut it up and split it when we got some extra time, got a couple extra hours at the end of the day here, and we got 5 high school kids that need something to do, or something like that. We kind of mostly fill time with that. So it's not too bad. It's worth it for us to do it. You just got to make sure that you, and this year when we had temperatures down in the teens in December and we're heating these 2 high tunnels, the problem is that the blower comes on the fan whenever it calls for heat. So you better have enough wood in there so it doesn't go all night. And I have to get up in the middle of the night and put firewood on it. I don't like that, but that's something you got to do sometimes. Okay, let's talk about these raised beds. We'll go over this slide first, and then we'll go into the other details later. This is gross income. And here's the crops that I selected. Now, we grow more crops than this, but these are the ones I just selected, okay, for us to compare. Spring mix, carrots, beets, arugula, radishes, and basil. Income, expenses. This slide's out of order. What the heck? There's our carrots. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Did you see that? Wait a minute. Did you see that? Look at it. That's nice. That must have been in November. We had gloves on. Okay, expenses. These slides were backwards. Let's look at gross income first, okay? Square footage is the same for everybody. The yield, now, something, I'm laying in bed the other night at the hotel, I'm thinking, I shouldn't have done that. I did square footage, but I did square footage on each bed. But there's walkways in between the high tunnels. You're really not saying how much you're making on the whole high tunnel. You're just only saying what you're making on the whole bed. So correct me on that if you will. Yield, and this yield is something that can vary widely. Like in November, December, it's a little more difficult to get that yield out of the spring mix because we're so closed up tight all the time that we get mold on spring mix, especially if you plant it real thick. But in the spring, that's not a problem at all. We get tremendous yield out of the spring mix in the spring. Carrots are pretty much the same all the time. Beets are the same. Arugula is pretty much the same. I only figured arugula one cutting, and you can get 2 cuttings off of arugula. Of course, the spring mix you can get sometimes 3 cuttings off of. Radishes, and then basil. And basil is something that the problem with basil is if you have a whole bed full, one of my whole beds, which is about 48 by 90. It's too much basil. You can't sell it all before it goes to flower. You can't pick it fast enough. Units, these are by the pound or by the bunch, by the pound. And the cost per unit, this is what we sell it for. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, but that's about what we sell it for. And so that's the total money you're making off of the high tunnel. And this is your gross income per square foot. Now, here's what we're assuming. I'm assuming 2 cuttings on spring mix. Like I said, you can get 3, but in like December, maybe you're going to get 1.5. And then beets, you're never going to get every single one of those beets that are in that bed. Arugula, I figured only 1 picking. Radishes have a 20% cull rate. They never seem to all mature well enough. And basil, second picking, half of the first, although sometimes you can get 3. It just depends on the weather. Even though you're in the high tunnel, you still have to have weather effects on these crops, just with humidity alone. Now, on these raised beds, here's what you need to know. Wait, we'll go to the other slide for that. There's a nice bed of spring mix. We had some extra concrete one time. We'll put some concrete down in between there, but most of it is gravelled. Landscape fabric with gravel on top of it. Okay, expenses. All right, this is where we want to talk about this. Okay, so there's the seed cost, the spring mix. Let's talk about where this stuff comes from. Spring mix is from Johnny's. It's Johnny's Gourmet Lettuce Mix. We've been growing the same thing for many, many years. It just does very well, although the seed cost continues to rise all the time. Arugula is Astro as a brand name. Carrots are Goldfinger, only because we can't get Nelson anymore. Nelson was sweeter. Goldfinger's not bad. Basil is Nufar. Beets, Dave likes to do a rainbow thing. So we do Touchtone Gold, Kestrel, Chicogah Guardsmarth, and White Albino. And radishes, same thing. He likes the rainbow thing. It's Ping Pong, which is white, Diego, which is red, and Amethyst, which is purple. So we have purple, white, and red radishes all in the same bunch. And on these high tunnels, I'm assuming 4 crops per bed. Sometimes we can get more. Sometimes we don't quite get 3, but usually 4 crops per bed. And I figured that we added the Pro Mix about once every other crop. And that's 6 bags of Pro Mix. I use a 2.8 cubic foot bag, and it has both kinds of biofungicide in there, in the bag as well. And I figured that every other crop. And we pay $10.75 a bag is what our cost is. And biologicals, we do ladybugs in the spring and the fall. In the spring, I do them twice, 2 applications. And we also do nematodes. One of the biggest problems that we've had with these raised beds is pill bugs. Pill bugs, sow bugs, whatever you want to call them. The problem with them is that they're mollusks, they're not insects, so there's nothing, you can't just spray on there and kill them. There's nothing there. So what we have found is we went to nematodes, parasitic nematodes, microscopic nematodes. I order them from Arabico usually, and I get 2 different species, and we spray them on in the spring, and then you have to water them in right away, and then we also do that in the fall, and that keeps the pill bugs under control. You can also use Bug-Getta. It will also kill, it has iron oxide in it, and it will also kill pill bugs, but you sprinkle that on, and the next morning you go, and it's gone. It's like so much that you sprinkled on there, and it's all gone. And I'm sure it helps to control them, but it would not be enough by itself. And that's where we've really been doing well with the nematodes. Nematodes will also control leaf miners on the red beets, which can also be a very serious problem in the high tunnel. Okay. Wait, did I miss anything down there? What is this? Oh, okay, these are the costs on the high tunnel. These are today's costs, by the way. I priced everything out of the Knowles catalog. Plastic. This is double layer plastic on these 30 by 96s with an inflation fan. And the raised beds, this is actual cost, what it would be. I priced it again in today's prices for 2 by 10 treated lumber. And then also the bed media, what we put in when we originally did it was mushroom compost. And that's what I would recommend if you were going to build this today. I would put mushroom compost in. And that's what it would cost, about $1,000 for 5 beds in a 30 by 96. So I didn't get the bottom line total cost on that, but you could add that all up if you wanted to. So the annual cost per bed is reduced quite a bit because you're getting 4 crops out of that bed in one season. So $138, yeah. 4 crops, assume getting 5 years from the plastic again, okay? All right, there you go. Now here's the important, well, that's not the important part. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, look at that. Okay, net income on the 30 by 96 high tunnel with 5 raised beds. This is what you're getting out of there. This is all your expenses, including labor. And you know that labor is the most important expense. It's the highest expense. So if you got somebody in there that's, you know, not performing up to par, then you're going to have larger expense. And it's a tough thing because, you know, some people can fly through those beds, but other people, and the biggest expense in all of this is not the harvest. It's the renovation. You got to go through there and pull out all those lettuce plants, put them in containers, shake them off, put them in containers, get them out of there, or whatever plants. That's the biggest expense is the renovation. It would be nice if you could plow those under, but you're not going to do that in a raised bed. Okay, so that's your profit right there, each crop, and that's your square foot, profit per square foot on each bed for each one of those crops. Unfortunately, we can only raise basil till about the middle of July. Otherwise, we could extend this income for a longer period of time. And the same thing with spring mix. We only do it in the spring and the fall. So probably like mid-May would be pretty close. What we try to do is we have spring mix until we have regular head lettuce in the field. Okay? So then we're not so much concerned about the spring mix after that because we have this other lettuce. So we have nice lettuce for them all the time. But spring mixes, they love this spring mix. They eat it up. It is so tender. You put this on a plate and then you take another plate and put what you're buying at Giant Eagle, and it's like night and day difference. Yeah, they both look good, but this one over here, my spring mix is so tender. Everybody tells me it's so tender. And by the way, when we pick that spring mix out of that high tunnel bed with that raised bed, we don't wash it. We just pick it and then we put it in a container and we take it in and we put it into bags and weigh it up at 1/3 of a pound in a bag. And that's the way that goes. And carrots, bunched or not bunched, they sell well. Beets are always good. Arugula is a good crop. And again, some of these things are not what we would grow in the middle of summer. We'd never plant radishes, arugula, or spring mix in the middle of summer. In the middle of summer, we do carrots and beets and basil. We also grow baby kale, we grow mizuna. And what else? That's about it. We're always looking for something new to plant in one of these beds, but that's what we've planted so far.
Other Asian greens?
Other Asian greens such as?
Your mustards or mixes?
Oh, then we'd have to mix things. And everybody says, well, is that all you have in here is lettuce in this spring mix? Yeah, that's it. It's 6 different kinds of lettuce. But if we had to mix things, that's just another thing. Another, what?
You can buy a mix.
That has this lettuce in it as well? Probably not. You can buy a spicy greens mix. I've seen that. I've grown that before, but not one that has lettuce as well. Yes, sir? Salanova, I've grown Salanova before, and we just thought that it's not worth it. It's too small of a head. All the heads that we're harvesting are larger, and people like big heads of lettuce.
I saw before the kale income figure surprised me. It was quite high, but is that baby kale, or is that a kale?
No, that's mature kale. In the 16 by 96s was mature kale. Yeah. And kale is a very popular crop. I mean, people are eating a lot more kale than they ever used to. I mean, 10 years ago, my gosh, I probably wouldn't even have planted kale 10 years ago. It was just for blacks that would eat it, Southern people that would eat it, you know, the Southern heritage people. But now everybody eats kale. Everybody eats it because it's the vegetable you want to eat. It's the powerhouse. It's the one, it's at the top of the list. Yes?
How do you irrigate? Do you drip or do you?
The 16 by 96s are definitely drip irrigation, but we also can overhead. We have both. In the raised beds, it's all overhead. We do 3 beds at one time we water.
Are you too far north for collard greens?
No, we could grow collard greens. There's just no demand for collard greens. Too small of a demand.
We grow them around here
As long as you have a market. Again, this is a southern culture crop, that collards. Yes?
Use a grains harvester for your spring mix and your.
No, just a knife.
A knife, okay.
Yeah, just a knife, yeah. We don't walk on those beds. We try to stay out of those beds. We try to harvest from the edge. Any other questions? Yes?
What were you doing for your head lettuce that was on plastic? And you've taken multiple crops off of that, right?
No, only one head of lettuce.
Right.
Okay.
But then aren't you replanting that or no?
Yeah, we would replant that, yeah.
With another head of lettuce?
No. And we remove into something else.
No. Do you take the plastic right out?
Not necessarily. We try not to. There's certainly, on those 16 by 96s, there's certainly some downtime there where we don't grow anything. Like if we grow lettuce in the spring, it's done like end of May, beginning of June, it's done. So we might let that fallow. It just depends on what Dave wants to do. Dave takes care of that stuff. He might go in there and plant peppers, or he might just let it fallow until August or September and then go in and plant kale or something like that. You know.
Leave that plastic down for the season.
Yeah, we generally leave it down for the season. Yeah, we're only driving in there with the tractor one time that year. We're not going to drive in there 2 times. It's too much labor. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.